announced interview. So we came here because we were told that you had CADA.
Yes.
And we wanted to go sana to the rehab center in
Yes.
Mayata.
Yes.
So happy sana we need to ask permission from your office.
Yes.
And we're doing a documentary feature on the drug war. Actually, as you know very well, it didn't really start with President Duterte. This war has been ongoing for a long time already. And you've been vice mayor for how many years now?
7.5 years.
7. And from that time you became vice mayor, you already headed CADAC.
Yes, CADAC is by ordinance, a creation by the Sangguniang Panlunsod, no? And according to the ordinance, it really is a jurisdiction of the vice mayor.
And this CADAC actually is based on a memorandum ordered by the DILG, the creation of BADACs and CADACs. Is this correct?
Yeah, the CADAC is mandatory. I think if I'm not mistaken, it's under the Dangerous Drugs Act or 9165 that all local government units must have an ADAC or an Anti-Drug Abuse Advisory Council, and all barangays must have BADACs or Barangay Anti-Drug Abuse Council. I think the problem is that not all of the LGUs followed this directive or this mandate. However, Quezon City was one of those that had followed it from the start, which is the reason why when the president made drugs the centerpiece of his agenda of governance, we in Quezon City were quite prepared for it.
So CADAC has been in existence since when?
CADAC, by ordinance, I think in early 2002, if I'm not mistaken. No? However, the anti-drug campaign has been existing long before that time because we had a vice mayor in the person of now Senator Vicente Soto. He started as the vice mayor of Quezon City, and the campaign against illegal drugs was one of his advocacies. So he started the program, and he also started the Tahanan, which you will be visiting. This is the Tahanan Anti-Drug Abuse Treatment Center, no? And it became an ordinance, I think, in 2002.
The question a lot of people ask is, the president has his own reasons for making the anti-drug campaign his centerpiece agenda. But does that mean that the previous efforts at combating drug abuse, the illegal drug trade have failed? Would you agree with that assessment?
Well, I am not in a position to make an assessment such as that. But what I would like to stress is that the president's directive has intensified the campaign against illegal drugs and has made it a serious part of our agenda. And if you notice from your research, in the past, yes, of course, illegal drugs is something that the government is mandated to fight. However, we notice also that a lot of police officers or the law enforcement agents themselves were involved in the illegal drugs trade, which meant that the government did not put that much seriousness in the battle against illegal drugs. No? And now, I think through the efforts of our president, not only did this intensify, but he made it quite clear and quite sure that this is something that he's serious about. That all those who violate this mandate should be punished or should be penalized, and that all LGUs must make this a priority.
In the case of Quezon City, how would you assess the anti-drug campaign before the President Duterte's assumption?
Before the President's campaign, we were going about with our mandate, which is prevention, treatment, and rehabilitation. And our tahanan has always had a fair amount of clients. No? sometimes puno naman din siya. Or in English, we had a full capacity. No? But then under the President's directive now, we intensify the community-based aspect of the program, no? Wherein, because he had this program requesting all users to, let's say, surrender or turn themselves in to the authorities, we were able to profile all these users now. We were able to classify them in terms of the seriousness of their drug affectation. And because of this, we were able to determine those that required institutionalization and those that required just community-based rehabilitation. So the President's directive helped us to make our program better, more target-specific, and actually to help us to quantify how effective it was, no, in the overall scheme of things. So now, we can proudly say that out of those, the police report says there are 20,000 that turned themselves in. Of those 20,000, 11,000 are accounted for in our profiling system. The 9,000, some of them may have left the barangay, may have left the city, but we're still looking for them by reconciling our records. And from those 11,000, those that require institutionalization have already or are already becoming institutionalized. So from 150, we now have 300 bed spaces in our tahanan. So we have expanded, and we are soon to open another facility with another 50 bed spaces specific to women drug dependents, no? And in addition, we have already graduated about 1,200 former drug dependents, we call them reformists, in our community-based program. And our program doesn't end with just the graduation, no? Based on our research and our profiling, we found out that most drug dependents use drugs out of a sense of hopelessness or helplessness, or maybe they feel lack of self-esteem, self-confidence, and a lot of this has to do with their being unemployed, no? So we realize employment plays a really big part in the sustainability of their being clean. So part of our program includes an employment program. So we have now signed memorandum of agreement with various agencies in the private sector to take in graduates from our community-based program. And we have also worked with, or are working with TESDA to provide skills training to those that need it. And those that are already skilled, we work with recruitment agencies to help them get placements in different corporations and job-providing agencies.
But considering yung population po of Quezon City, the number of those who surrendered, very small number compared to the population.
Yes, that's true. We have 3 million people. So about 20,000 have surrendered so far. But of course, this is not all, no? That's why we are now more proactive in our efforts. So in the past, before the Duterte administration, I would say we were more reactive, no? Kailangan dalhin, or the families of the victims must bring their family members for assessment. There must be some kind of voluntary action, or the police bring in people that they feel should be rehabilitated. And but in terms of being proactive, we don't go out actively looking for them. No, they come to us. No, but now we now are more active in going out into the community to look for the more vulnerable sector. So we have a ordinance now where all of the let's say the tricycle drivers are being tested. No? And they're considered a vulnerable sector because according to reports, the majority of them have been using or are using illegal substances to help them with their jobs. We are testing all government employees, whether those here in City Hall or in the barangay level. And we are currently implementing an ordinance requiring business establishments to have their employees tested as well prior to the granting of their business permits or the renewal of their business permits. So in other words, we are more proactively looking for these users so that we can help them change their ways and become rehabilitated. This is in relation to what was happening in the past. No? So in terms of the program now, it is much more aggressive now. It is much better funded now, no, compared to before. And the efforts are greater, the programs are bigger and more expansive compared to before.
You're saying that the drug problem is really very serious in terms of how it affects community life in Quezon City.
I think it's a serious problem, no, based on the data that we've received. A lot of them are breadwinners of the family. According to the police reports, a lot of crimes went down as a result of the anti-drug campaign of the president, meaning a lot of crimes like carnapping or theft, etc., are related to drug use. That's based on police reports. And a lot of families also break down because of drug use within the family. So it's become a social problem as well. No? So in that regard, I think it is quite serious. Now, with regards to the numbers, I cannot predict at present how many more will surrender in the near future, but the campaign is ongoing and it is still active. And we have managed to come up with an interagency group, no, which consists of the local government, the barangays, the church, the police, the PDEA or national government, and the private sector and the NGO sector. We work together now to ensure that this program that we have started is moving in the same direction, that everybody is working together, and that basically the desire of our president to eliminate the use or drugs in a community is achieved here in Quezon City.
But is that really possible?
Yeah, well, so far we are quite proud, no? Because I don't know about other LGUs, but here this interagency cooperation has been achieved and is working very, very harmoniously.
I mean, during all of the barangays.
Well, we are of the belief that as long as me personally, drugs is a lucrative business because that's what it is, there will always be drugs. No? That's why our mandate or the way we're approaching this is through prevention, no? Building drug-resistant communities. No? So if the supply is there, if the people themselves know that it's bad, if the people themselves are vigilant, and if the potential users know that that is not the answer to their problems, then even if the supply is there, the barangay community will be resilient to drugs, and eventually the demand will die down. When the demand dies down, the supply dies down as well. That's what we think. That's our strategy. No, we don't believe in violence here in Quezon City. Even if there's talk about these things all over the country, we are quite steadfast here in Quezon City that violence is not the answer to this problem. It is really prevention, and for those who are already using, it is rehabilitation and treatment and sustainability. No.
So this campaign, prevention campaign, to make the barangays drug resilient, illegal drugs resilient. How would you measure success? When did you begin this, and is there a way of measuring?
Yes, we have something called drug-cleared barangays. No? So there is a criteria that was given to us by the Dangerous Drugs Board, wherein you can measure whether a barangay is drug-free or not. No? So that some of the criteria include the absence of drug coddlers or protectors, plantations, drug dens, etc., no, or laboratories. That's the DDB criteria. Quezon City added an additional criteria. No? So here in Quezon City, and this is mandated by ordinance, every barangay must have something called a Masa Masid. This is a volunteer group. And in English, Masa Masid means Citizens Against Illegal Drugs and Anomalies. No? And these are volunteer groups that are formed within the barangay to be vigilant against all forms of irregularities, especially illegal drugs. So every barangay must have that, and every barangay must have something called an ubas, or in Tagalog, ugnayan ng barangay at simbahan, and in English, a relationship with the church, whether this is the Catholic Church, the Muslim Church, the Iglesia ni Cristo, whatever religious denomination, there must be a relationship with this church so that the church can provide spiritual guidance and enhancement within the community. Because we also believe that the spiritual aspect is necessary for a potential drug user to be able to say no to the temptations of illegal drugs. And apart from that, we have these suggestion boxes that are in the barangay so that the citizens can be active in terms of submitting the names of people that they think might be involved in the drug trade anonymously. So we have that.
Isn't that dangerous?
Yeah, the human rights advocates were against that from the start. Or in the beginning, because they feared for the lives of those who would divulge information. But what we did was we have these boxes which are now standard in terms of template, and then a citizen can drop the names or addresses anonymously, without having to identify themselves. And then the information gathered must be validated by the police together with the BADAC and together with NGOs before these people before these people are caught or any action taken against them. There must be validation, because we are aware also that people might be submitting names of their enemies who might not actually be involved at all in any anomalous activity. So all of these things have been taken into consideration.
A few months back, when you were interviewed by Rappler regarding the killings in Quezon City, you expressed alarm over the killing. How is it now, right now, the situation, so far as with your position that violence is not the answer to solution to the anti-drug?
Yeah, I stand by my belief that violence is not the answer. Our Chief of Police, General Guillermo Eleazar, shares my advocacy against violence. He and I have agreed that as much as possible, violence shall not be resorted to. However, he has told me that in cases where there is a police operation and the users or the coddlers fight back, they have no choice but to resort to violence as a last resort, no? And that's a policy of the police. So I will not argue with their policies. However, I told them if it's possible for us to invest in body cameras, no, and then I think the mayor has already agreed to provide body cameras to all operations personnel of the police, so that we can make sure that when there is an operation where violence does occur, that we can really validate through the use of these cameras whether fighting or naglaban ba talaga itong mga nahuling ito. Because the last thing that we want to happen is that the police will use this excuse, is this often used ubiquitous excuse na nanlaban as a way for them to exercise violence when violence should not have been resorted to.
Okay. But the problem is the supply, as you said. That is one of the main problems. In your profiling of the users, those who surrender, did they tell you where they get the drugs that they, how do the supply, where does it come
Yeah,
from?
from peers. Most of them get it from their peers. And I realized that the way things happen here is you become a user because your peer offers you drugs, no? And they offer you drugs to sustain their own habits. So may ganyan palang dynamic, no? Like, I'm a user, I need to sustain my habit, therefore I have to start pushing so that I will earn enough to pay for my habit. So that's how it goes, no? But in terms of the ultimate sources, I think the ones that surrender don't know who these actual sources are. These big-time drug lords and coddlers, I don't think they know.
So there are no laboratories?
Yeah, one thing that we're doing here is that we realize that laboratories are not located in depressed areas. These are located in gated subdivisions. And one of the things that CADAC has done is to meet with all the homeowners associations that are living in gated subdivisions. We have given them a manual with the symptoms or with the criteria to identify whether a property in their subdivision might be being used as a drug laboratory. There are certain symptoms like smells coming out, certain types of clandestine activities. So they are aware also that they should be reporting all cases like this in their subdivisions. Moreover, we have passed an ordinance in which all transients or people who do not live in a particular barangay but have moved there should register with the barangay. No? In that case, we can also keep track of these surrenderers that we cannot account for. Like I mentioned, there are 9,000 missing surrenderers, nag-surrender sa police, pero hindi sila naka-profile. Baka naglumipat na ng barangay. So if they're new there, we can also keep track of them and see if their names are in the list of the police.
Those who are placed in the rehab center, ma'am, ano po ba yung, what kind of anong profile of these people who are undergoing rehab?
Well, what we do is we have doctors that are DOH accredited. No? So everybody that surrenders goes through something called drug dependency evaluation or DDE. And the doctors or physicians then are able to assess whether they are meant to be institutionalized or where their drug use is just minor and they can be treated outside of an institution. So those who are institutionalized are those that are perceived to be very addicted or what we call in Tagalog, lulong na lulong. No? So yan yung profile nila dyan. Meaning they cannot be cured outside of an institution. And inside the institution, they are required to stay for a minimum of 6 months to about 1 year or even 1 year and a half until they get over their drug dependency. And there are all kinds of activities that go on inside. But we try to avoid the use of chemicals. No? So we adopted something called a therapeutic modality, meaning we use only natural forms of treatments for them. No? And they also undergo trainings, ALS or alternative learning systems, so they can finish their education. And they have livelihood programs as well, so that when they leave the facility after their tenure there is over, they will be able to integrate into the mainstream. And then people from BADAC, the barangay, are in charge of monitoring their progress. So that's how it works.
Those who are undergoing community-based rehab, what kind of activities are they doing?
Well, they have a module or modules. We have 12 modules that were crafted for us by the Psychological Association of the Philippines or the PAP, led by Dr. Gina Hechanova of the Ateneo Psychology Department. So in the past, we were following the 24-module program of the DOH. But we found out that these 24 modules are very hard for our drug surrenders to complete. No? So we cut them down to 12, but they're still complete. Nandyan pa rin lahat ng mga ingredients. So they have to go through these 12 clinical sessions, and then there are 3 additional sessions with the families. Because we recognize also the need for family support to help them stay away from their previous vices. No? And then every weekend, they have spiritual modules that are provided for by the churches. So we have a memorandum of agreement signed with the Diocese of Cubao and the Diocese of Novaliches, wherein their priests conduct spiritual enhancement programs for our surrenderers as well. And then we have physical activities for them as well. So it's a comprehensive program. And after they go through this program, they are tested for a period of time to make sure that they test negative consistently. And when they test negative consistently, they undergo a graduation and can be mainstreamed into society already.
So it's been a year and a half since the president began his campaign. At this point in time, can you say that in Quezon City at least you have achieved what you've set out to do?
My gosh, I think it's a long way because we have 16,000. Oh no, 11,000 profiled and we've only graduated 1,200, no? So we have to help so many more. So but at least the program is in place. And we've proven that the program works because there's very few relapse cases, no? And as long as we steadily and surely continue with the program, eventually we will finish the 11,000 profiled. And we're assuming, of course, more will start surrendering because they will see the success of the program. And for us, it's just we continue to plow on and try to improve the program when we can. And with the DDB recently, or I think it was with PIDEA recently, we tweaked a little bit our program para mas mabilis siya, no, so that mas marami tayong mapag-graduate. And slowly we are tweaking the program so that we can improve where there are gaps and where we can fast track the process as well. Because it's a little slow. Yeah.
Just one last question.
Yeah.
What is the drug of choice po?
Overwhelmingly, it's shabu. Mm-mm. But for the private sector, I just want to stress also, it doesn't mean that we only focus on the poor. Like I mentioned, we also focus on gated subdivisions. And it's not just for them to be vigilant, but it's also for them to educate people within the subdivisions. But what we do is, since we also realize that people in subdivisions like to value their privacy more, we submitted to them a list of private rehabilitation facilities as well as private physicians that they can go to without having to pass through the government, and then we coordinate with these private service providers to give us statistics. So we're not interested in names, we're just interested in statistics.
And have they given you statistics po?
Yes, we're able to get statistics from them.
And what is the...
Well, I have to check the number of those in the private sector. We have data from them as well.
Okay, so thank you so much po.
So thank you so much for your time.
We were planning to go sana to the rehab center.
Yeah.